Hey guys, I'm Nathan. Today I'm going to talk about the English problems Asian speakers have with my friend and also a teacher on EF.
Yeah, I teach for EF English.
Yes.
Yeah, so, well, I think first I'd like to ask you, if we're talking about problems that Chinese speakers or Asian English learners face, what do you think?
I think the first one is listening, because I don't know about you guys, but when I was a child in primary school, so actually in Taiwan we learn English from the first grade in primary school, and how to teach English is like there is a Asian teacher go up the stage, and then we start to like memorize the words on the textbook. And we don't really have the chance to like communicate with the speakers, with like the native English speakers. And I remember when I was in like elementary school, when the class is about to like end, and the teacher will say, "Okay, guys, line up," and like the teacher will ask us like maybe one question about today's like material, and maybe today's material, like this topic is your hobby, and the teacher will ask you like, "Okay, Nathan, what is your hobby?" And then you answer, "My hobby is eating a lot of French fries."
Okay. That's my hobby.
Yeah, and the teacher will say, "Okay, you passed. You can go." Yeah. But
it's not very much practice.
Yeah, it's not very much practice, and I think the problem is like the government, they don't have enough resource to give these students. So like we have one teacher, right?
Yeah.
But 30 students. So
yeah, that's
tough.
Hard.
It's tough.
That is tough. I would say that it's the same. In the United States, we're required to take usually like 3 years of foreign language, but Americans usually don't speak any other language other than English. Not at all. Maybe a few words. And I think the problem is, like you're saying, you've got a class of 30 people, you've got one teacher, and usually our teachers are not native speakers as well.
Yeah.
You know, if we have my Spanish teacher was just an American guy, English speaker, learned Spanish as an adult. So obviously his accent was different and stuff like that. But I think the problem is that you don't get enough exposure to the real language. I think the problem is that in the classroom, that like you were saying, they ask you one question.
Yeah.
And that's one question. Like if you were to sit down for an hour and try to read something or watch something interesting and try to learn from that, you would get so many more words. You get so many more sentences. Whereas in a class, they're gonna limit it. You know, they just want you to memorize one thing, two things. You know what I mean?
Indeed.
Like immediately. Like instead of like getting exposed to a lot of content, they just give you a tiny bit of content and you have to memorize it, and if you don't do it, they're like, you messed up.
So the first one we will go with listening.
So listening specific, okay, but we didn't talk about listening, I think, is like, I think if you're having trouble, listening is basically like, can you understand when people speak?
Yeah.
Right? And there's a lot of different parts of that. And I think the main part is vocabulary. If you don't have the vocabulary, it's going to be very difficult to understand what people say. If you don't know the words, you can't understand it. But then I think another thing is that if you don't have practice listening to native speakers speak in normal situations, if you don't have that experience, then sometimes even though you know the words, you can't understand what they're saying because they're not speaking clearly, they're speaking too fast. If you're a native speaker, you just kind of can guess from the context what they're going to say.
Yeah.
But if you're not, you don't have that context.
Okay, I want to talk about the listening problem with like Chinese speakers or Asian speakers, whatever. For me, I've taken a test called IELTS before. I don't know if you guys know that or not. Like IELTS is an English test. You must take it, otherwise you cannot go to like study abroad or stuff like that. And like mostly like normally the standard is 7. So you have to score 7, 7, 7, 7 in like
in all the sections.
Yeah, in all the sections. And the hardest part, like for Chinese students, is writing, and then it's listening. And most of them score very high on reading. Yeah, most of them score very high on reading.
Yeah.
And speaking, so-so.
Yeah.
Not very good.
I think reading is usually, with the exception of maybe when you're learning Mandarin, a language with characters, I think reading a language is usually the easiest part, because the words are sitting there. You can take all the time you want to look at them.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah.
And also like reading, we've done like 1,000 times in the school, because in the school, like, I don't know about you guys, like in my school in Taiwan, teachers, they just assign you like your assignments. You have to like fill the blanks, and memorize maybe 50 words, and they will give you like questions. So like, this is a D blank G, and walking on the sidewalk. So you have to feel dog. But if you don't memorize, so they force you to memorize the word. And if you like, maybe if you score bad, then you will be like detention.
Yeah, get detention.
Yeah, you will get a detention. So you cannot like leave a score early.
Yeah, I think that's I think reading is easy because that's in school is very focused on reading, because they have books. They have one teacher, but they got as many books as you need for everyone to sit there and read the textbook. So people get a lot of practice with that. Also, the words are sitting still. They're just there. They don't run away. Like with listening, I think the problem is they're there. If you don't hear it the first time, then it's gone. Yeah.
So for listening, like I score 8 in IELTS, like the listening part, listening aspect. So what I did is like I speed up to like 1.5 speed when I was listening to the material.
Like YouTube videos or something?
Yeah, YouTube videos, there are like a lot of like IELTS listening practice on YouTube, so you can like go and search it.
So you increase the speed.
Increase the speed. And like, I wouldn't say IELTS listening is like the most difficult listening, but I would say like they speak in a lot of different accents.
Okay.
And Chinese students, they don't have the chance to listen to different accents. And that's the problem. Like, I think that's a problem with listening.
I think a lot of times when language learners encounter other accents, that can be really tough. Like when I learned Spanish, for instance, I learned from Mexican speakers.
Yeah.
And then when I hear an accent from Spain, I'd be like, what? It's very different. Like, it can be hard if someone's speaking, even if you're a native English speaker and someone comes up and speaks to you with a heavy Scottish accent or something, it might be hard. You're like, wait, can you say that again? Because we're not used to it.
Yeah.
So I think getting used to a lot of different accents is very important for something like that.
Yeah.
And I think if you're not around a lot of native speakers, which most people aren't when they're learning English as a foreign language, you gotta find content online. I think you look for videos from different countries. You watch movies that take place in different places. I think that's what you got to do.